Coming up on the New Money Habits podcast. And so with a credit card, it's the same thing. It's a dangerous tool. And when you don't know how to use it, you can harm yourself. But I'd rather you learn how to use the tool wisely so that you don't harm yourself, but that you also don't have to throw away a perfectly good financial tool just because you're afraid of it or because you haven't been taught how to use it properly. Hey there, budgeteers. Are you ready to unlock the power of each payday and take control of your finances like a boss? Introducing the Payday Power Planner from New Money Habits. This isn't your average budgeting tool. Oh no. With the Payday Power Planner, you'll harness the unique rhythm of your paychecks to supercharge your financial game. Say goodbye to the confusion of monthly budgets and hello to the clarity of every payday. You'll know exactly when money is coming in and when it's going out, giving you the edge you need to stay on top of your finances. But that's not all. With the Payday Power Planner, you'll easily spot whether you're rocking a surplus or facing a deficit. Armed with this knowledge, you'll make informed decisions that set you up for financial success. It's time to transform your relationship with money and create the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom. Get your hands on the Payday Power Planner from New Money Habits today and start making every dollar count. Don't let financial stress hold you back. Create a better plan for your money and seize the power of your pay period and thrive with the Payday Power Planner. Visit newmoneyhabits.com now to grab your free copy and unleash your financial potential. Well, welcome back, Maria. Happy to have you again. Want to check in with you and see what have you been up to? What's new? What's exciting?
Didn't expect you to ask me that question. Well, we're just, 5 weeks into the school year at this point, maybe more than that. Time seems to be going super, super fast. So I just started doing that class, which I'm super excited for. It's been so fun to put stuff together for these young budding entrepreneurs and, people going into the world and learning all of this personal finance stuff. And so it's just been so neat to take everything that you and I work on with adults and be able to try to be a little bit more proactive and preventive with the kids. So that's kind of where my focus has been mostly the last few weeks.
Well, and you did not anticipate this because neither did I. But today we're going to have the big credit card debate. It's a well that I like to go back to every once in a while because I think it's important to kind of revisit, the good, the bad, the ugly when it comes to credit cards. But now I'm curious, as you are working with, the younger generation, have you broached that topic yet? And if so, what does that look like?
Great question.
Not, what do you plan on doing?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's a great question. It's in the curriculum. We have not gotten to that lesson yet because I like to do a lot more foundational stuff with them before getting into the weeds with some of that. But it is in there. So one of the things that I plan to do with them is just to make it absolutely clear as to how it works. As I was talking to my older children who are right now 17 and 20, even with them trying to figure out how to get credit cards to work and stuff, it's been interesting to try to explain what it really means when you put money on there, but then take the money away, because there's this disconnect for them. They're used to having, when you say, the balance is a positive, $300, they're thinking they have $300 in the bank. And they do when that's what we're talking about. But when we then switch that to credit, you say, well, you've got, $300, your statement comes in, it says $300. That has to resonate for them and be recorded in their minds as a negative 300 rather than a positive, even though it says positive. So part of that is just helping them really understand what that means. So I like to really get into the just hands-on activities with the kids. So we're actually going to be using sand as a representation of what all of this looks like. So, when you have all this credit available and then you spend against it, so the sand goes away, so they can watch that amount that's available go away, and then we'll have a different color sand of when they have to actually pay that. So we'll be able to see, what's happening on the cards as you're actually using that.
Well, what I like most about what you said is that you haven't gotten to that yet because you're trying to set a firm foundation,
Yeah.
right? And so I think it's the same for us as adults. Unfortunately for many of us, we didn't have financial literacy, and so we found ourselves in credit card debt or whatever. And then we're looking at it in hindsight. We're looking back at it like, oh, I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known. But I think the principle still stands that you have to have a firm foundation of financial literacy, just on the basics of what do you got coming in, what do you got going out, that sort of thing, and get really good at that. And then we can add on how to manage credit wisely. And so, like I said, this is a well I like to come back to, because I think it's important to refresh ourselves on, credit cards. Yes, no, why not? If yes, then what do I need to be concerned with? If no, how am I managing without? And just have a conversation about
Yeah.
the use of credit cards, because they are a financial tool that I do believe, I will start off by saying, I do believe they belong in everybody's financial tool belt. But the analogy that I use all the time is one of a circular saw for a carpenter. A circular saw is a very dangerous tool that a carpenter uses to build homes or whatever they're building. But just because it's a dangerous tool doesn't mean that the carpenter avoids using the tool. No, instead, the carpenter learns how to use the tool safely and effectively so that he can use that tool and keep it as part of his tool belt. And so with a credit card, it's the same thing. It's a dangerous tool. And when you don't know how to use it, you can harm yourself. But I'd rather you learn how to use the tool wisely so that you don't harm yourself, but that you also don't have to throw away a perfectly good financial tool just because you're afraid of it or because you haven't been taught how to use it properly.
Yeah. So I think there's only one part of that discussion that I would probably disagree with. And it's the statement that it belongs in everyone's tool belt. And the only reason that I disagree with that is because everyone is so individual. And if there is a circumstance where that person, it really will just do more harm than good, then we don't need every single carpenter in the world to have a circular saw. We just need to make sure that they have what's available to them to build houses, and their houses might look different than the people who have a circular saw. But I do agree that it's not something that should be avoided by everybody either. I don't like the all or nothing statements. I don't think that there's a one size fits all for any statement, and that's the only reason that I don't agree with that one particular piece of what you said.
Yeah.
Everything else that you said, though, 100% agree with.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair point. Sometimes I try to catch myself using the all or nothing, never, every type of language, the absolute language. I try to catch myself, but you're right. Like, no, I more meant that we shouldn't avoid it.
100% agree.
If you want to know how to use that tool wisely, let's learn how to use the tool wisely so that you can use the tool.
Yes, I do agree with that.
Yeah. So I'd like to start the conversation with making a case for why. Why do I feel like it's okay to have credit cards when other financial gurus will tell you avoid them at all costs? And my go-to nowadays, I have a couple of go-tos, but my top go-to with clients is security. I like the idea that the bank's money is the money that's at risk, not the money in my checking account when I'm using a debit card. So for security purposes, I like the use of a credit card, but that's just where the story begins.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting that you use the word security there, because while I don't disagree with that, I think so many of the gurus that you're probably mentioning are the ones who would say that having a card is actually causing a lack of security for you. But I agree that what you're saying is it's not leverage, because that's certainly not the right word, but you're allowing the risk, right? That's really what you're talking about here, is the risk of whether it's somebody taking the money or having that money tied up for yourself and putting that on the banks. I can think of an example where obviously that's when we're talking about risk, we can talk about somebody stealing something. But when we're talking about having your money tied up, one example that I know I've come across myself, and maybe you have as well, is the idea of using a card for like business expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So I have, obviously a business. And so I can use that card or I can use my debit card, either one. For my own business, if it's a small enough expense, I don't mind using my OPEX account from my business. Having said that, my husband has a job where they do not have a corporate credit card. They used to. They don't anymore. And so he actually has to do some traveling, and they had asked all of the people to have their own card. And we actually ran into a couple of employees who have done plans where there's like anti-credit card, and they actually don't even have the ability to do any of the stuff that they have to do. There was one or two of the people on my husband's team who actually went and got a credit card so that they could do this. And then there've been a couple times when my husband's the one who will front the money, and then he just gets reimbursed through them, through his company for them. So there is technically a workaround for others, as long as there's someone like my husband who's willing to take the potential risk for that. So let's talk about that for just a second. When you say that you want to, that you like the security, tell me a little more about is there anything besides the two things that I just mentioned that you're referring to when it comes to security?
Hey there, budgeteers. Good news can only be good news if there's bad news. So, what's the bad news? The bad news is you and I have a deadly disease called sin, and this disease causes us to rebel and disobey God. See, God is holy, righteous, and just, and He cannot be in the presence of sin. So this horrible disease of ours separates us from the God who created us. And the bad news gets worse. There isn't anything you or I can do to make ourselves right with God. We are dead in our sins and on our way to an eternity separated from God. But that's not God's will for us. See, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. God did what only God could do. He made a way for us to be reconciled to Him through Jesus Christ. Jesus came into the world to save sinners like you and me. While we were still sinners, storing up God's anger against us for our rebellion and disobedience, Christ died for us. Jesus took the punishment that you and I deserve and have earned. Jesus is the substitute for your punishment and mine. Now, isn't that some good news? The word gospel means good news. The gospel of Jesus Christ is that you and I broke God's law and Jesus paid the fine. When we place our faith and trust in Jesus, we get to experience God's grace and mercy. Our gratitude should turn us from our rebellious and disobedient sin toward God, seeking after Him and His righteousness. When we do, God gives us a new heart and a new mind. Praise God for His goodness, and remember, God loves, humans sin, Jesus saves. They touch on what you're talking about, but I'll give some examples. And like your husband, I too have been in that situation where working for a company, once upon a time, they used to pay for all of the travel up front. Then they changed their policies and they asked the employees to do it. Now, the head of my department was willing to put everything on her credit card. But as I experienced more and more travel and things were kind of like last minute or whatever, reaching out to another person to be like, hey, can you get this, and this all bought up for me? Just it became like a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to this was after having closed 13 credit cards in the year 2012 when I came to learn of this whole anti-credit card thing, right? So I got rid of every single one.
So you've been on the other side of this.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely. But it was in 2013 that I said, all right, I'm doing this travel for work. This is becoming cumbersome. I will apply for one credit card. I will have this one credit card, and this is what its purpose will serve. The only purpose of this credit card is for travel for work at that time. So part of it is the convenience of that, right? But the security part of that was there wasn't any way on this earth that I was going to freeze my assets in my checking account or drain my assets in my checking account for this company. I just wasn't going to do it. So using a debit card wasn't that, oh, I can't because some rental car companies don't accept debit cards. It wasn't that. It was, I'm not putting up my money for this organization. And that organization is going to reimburse me on my very next paycheck. So I will just pay it off. So there's a little bit of convenience, but the security, or what I'm wrapping up in security, is the idea like I don't want to be freezing or draining my checking account for a big time corporation.
Yeah, no, that I think that makes sense. Now, one thing, I've had a conversation with my husband before, and we've had to recognize, because there are people who say, "What the heck are you thinking about putting all of that money on your credit card? Your company, they should be reimbursing you. What if they go under?" And so we have had to have that conversation, because I personally have been part of a company that just overnight literally went under, and they didn't do, some of them didn't fulfill orders, and there were people who had made payments, and it was a mess. And so I do know that there is that inherent risk there. So we have had the discussion that we recognize, look, we could be in some not trouble, but we could be on the hook for some of this if it doesn't happen right away, or if they go under in between the time. Like, he gets reimbursed really pretty quickly. But if something happened, we don't know all of the underpinning workings going underneath. So anything could happen. So we have to be prepared to make that shift really quickly. One thing that we made sure that we did, and I don't want to go off the rails here with you, but one of the cards that we got has a 1.5% cash back. Now, 1.5% is not a lot of money. I totally get that. But we have been able to cash in on all of that over the years of him using it. So, I mean, in the event that they do go under, we probably would have at least recouped some of what he would have lost in that event. So I just want to throw that out there, that you can be a little bit more strategic about the way that you go about what kinds of cards you use in the scenario that we're talking about.
Yeah. The other part of the security, and I experienced this when traveling for this specific company. I'd have to go to Florida. I'm here in Arizona, so I traveled to Florida. And on one of my trips coming back, I get a call. It's the credit card company. They're like, "We know that you were in Florida, but are you still there?" "No." "Okay. Somebody's trying to use your card." So when I talk about security, I also talk about the bank's money is the money that's at risk in that situation, not my checking account, and not my mortgage payment or my car insurance payment. My money's not. And I believe, I could be completely wrong. This could be the world according to Nino, and I could have the wrong perception here. So I'll preface what I'm about to say with that qualifier. But I'm not sure I get the same phone call if it's my debit card. I'm not sure that the bank responds and reacts and acts as quickly as they do if it was my debit card. And so I have to wait until I see these fraudulent charges show up in my checking account to then be the one that reaches out to the bank. See, the bank reached out to me. Now I have to reach out to the bank. Like I said, I could be completely wrong about that, but I have this sneaking suspicion that when fraud happens on a credit card, it gets dealt with by the bank much quicker than fraud linked to a checking account.
Yeah, I don't know that to be truth or false, so I won't weigh in on that. But I don't know. I do know that when you use like a PIN, you have very little recourse on a debit card. That much I know. because they figure you know the PIN, and so you are the one who's authorizing that transaction. But I know that there. I used to know Dave Ramsey, for example, and I know one of the things he would cite is that you have the same protections. If it has a Visa or a MasterCard or something on there, it
And
has the same
as long as
protections.
you run it as a credit card.
Yeah. And so I admittedly don't have studies myself that show that or information that proves that. But maybe your sense is right. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily the point, although here is something that is factual. When when a fraudulent charge ends up on a credit card, my money has not been affected. I don't
Right.
have to pay it. So even if the bank didn't call me and I called them, nothing has happened to my money.
This is correct.
That's not the same when it's a debit card linked to my checking account. That's
This
my
is
money
correct.
that's gone. And now I have to convince the bank that they need to replenish those funds. And maybe convincing them is super easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to convince them to replenish my funds versus in the other scenario, I just have to convince them not to honor a fraudulent charge.
Right. And even if you are able to successfully convince your bank to give you your funds back, there usually is quite a delay, anywhere from at least 7 to 10 business days. So we're talking like 2 to 3 weeks oftentimes. And so, yeah, having your money tied up for that amount of time, especially if it's a large amount, it can really screw you up, especially if you are running a zero-based budget. Now, I don't know how many of your listeners run zero-based budgets, but for those who do, and that could be quite the thorn in this side of somebody who's trying to run something like that, for sure.
Yeah, and I know that with the clients that I sit down with, there's always like a buffer in the checking account. But again, even if there's a buffer in the checking account, let's say it's $100 or $200. How do we know that the fraudulent charge isn't more than that?
Right.
Or yeah. So like I said, my case for the use of credit cards really starts with this idea of security and some of the things that we've talked about. But another element of it for me is convenience. And I think you and I and myself and others have had this conversation about conveniences and not needing to apologize for them. Right? Sometimes we like conveniences. And I'll give you another perfect example. So gasoline is one of those categories where for the right client, I'll encourage them to start handling it in cash. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when my wife and I started our new money habits, asking her to pay cash at the pump was never going to happen because we had small children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to ask her to pull the children out of the car, to walk into the gas station, to prepay with cash, to go back out, put the kids back in the car and pump the gas. Like, I'm not going to do that. Actually, maybe I even suggested it and she's all like, I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, fair enough. Absolutely.
I was like, if you were that dedicated, you probably did suggest it.
And so, okay, reevaluate. And so for the convenience of at the pump, we're going to use a credit card because we're not going to necessarily take that particular category, make it a cash category. Again, it's just one of those things that convenience, wanting to use a card at the pump, plus security, not wanting to use my debit card at the pump means I'm using a credit card. Hey there, budgeteers. Are you tired of feeling like your finances are running the show? Well, it's time to flip the script and take charge of your money with New Money Habits Financial Coaching. This isn't your typical financial advice. New Money Habits is about empowering you with the knowledge and tools you need to make savvy money moves and build a solid financial foundation. Here's the deal. We're offering a free discovery session to kickstart your journey to financial freedom. Yep, you heard me right. Free. In this session, one of our experienced coaches will help you to pinpoint your financial goals and create a better plan for your money. We're talking about mastering your money mindset, picking up practical money management skills, and having someone to hold you accountable along the way. So if you're ready to kiss financial stress goodbye and say hello to a brighter financial future, then schedule your free session today to create the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom.
Yeah. So, I don't know at what point we're going to go into the arguments against it.
In a few minutes.
Okay.
In a moment or two.
Well, remind me to tell you all of the things that I've done because of all of the arguments that you're making and when they've backfired. Because that would be part of the arguments against some of it. But it's not an argument against it. It actually is more of a discussion for understanding behavior and habits anyway, and how even if you are ultimately aware of things, it's like it can still get out of hand. So we can certainly talk about that in a few minutes.
So go there now.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right. Well, so I'm with you on all of these things. And in fact, the whole idea of the gas pump thing, I mean, I was the mom with the little kids, and sometimes I actually did turn the car off, lock the door with the children in there, and walk in, or, walk up to the place and make the payments and stuff. But eventually it just became too much, and I didn't want to keep doing that anymore. And it was also, I don't know if I had flashbacks of back in the day when you didn't even have credit cards, which I was fine with way back then. But you remember, like, you had to get the pump perfectly set. Now they'll pre-do it for you. So if you say, $10 on number 5, they'll set it. But before, like, you didn't prepay, and like you'd have to like try to get it just perfect. And if not, you had to find 5 cents in the car to go do $5.10. That was back when gas was like $1 a gallon. I still remember that day when it changed, and I was like, it's going to cost me $20. I had a big tank when I was young. And I was like, it's going to cost me $20 to fill up this gas tank. What am I going to do? And that was when it was $4 an hour to work. Anyway, we're really dating ourselves right now. But
I was going to say, when I started driving, but I was also in New York at the time, gas was already over $1. But when I drove out to Arizona in 1998 and I saw that you could get gas for 97, 98, 99 cents a gallon, I was like, whoa, that's incredible.
That's funny. Well, I was in Illinois, and it went up to $1 before I graduated high school, and I graduated in 1996. So before then, it was $1. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I just remember having to try to get to the exact change. So without having to even consider some of that stuff, it really was more of a convenience thing. And I agree with you. We should not have to feel guilty about conveniences. We shouldn't have to apologize for them. I'm with you on that. I will say, though, that in any sort of behavior, there is a slippery slope oftentimes. And I have been, I was going to say fallen victim, but I'm not really a victim. I'm just make my own choices. And I have made choices to the point where there's a slippery slope, and then it almost backfires. And so I just want to make sure I talk about that a little bit today, so that the people who are listening and going, oh yeah, right on, I want to be able to do that. This isn't necessarily permission to do the things that are going to mess up your plan. Okay. Yeah. And so I want you to actually think about the things that are going to be good for your plan. And I think what Nino's trying to do here is take away any of the guilt. If using a credit card is a thing that's good for your plan, then you go ahead and you do that without feeling guilty. If using one will lead to destruction for you, then maybe you just don't use it. Or wait until you figure out how to use it safely, like the saw, and be able to use it as a tool rather than as something that will destroy you. So I know that we've used cards, for example, for my daughter's tuition. Okay. So my daughter, she's in college right now. And when we don't qualify for any sort of grants, we don't even qualify for any sort of subsidized loans. So any loan that she were to take out for school would immediately start accruing interest. You're with me?
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to buy her some time. And so we had some cards available, whether they were new in her name or they were available to us, to have 0% on something for like 18 months. And so we would use some of that in order to buy ourselves the 18 months worth of time. There's nothing wrong with any of it. We have not paid interest on any of those, but those are coming due soon. And now she's a junior in college. And so you can imagine we've been paying those down, but also paying her tuition, and she's been paying half of it. But still, there's going to be a chunk that's not yet paid. And that bill is going to come due. And it's like I think the interest rate on that's going to probably be like 25 to 35%, given whatever credit card it is. And I refuse to pay that amount of money for interest, just for the record. So she's going to have to get creative. And maybe now she goes and gets one of the federal loans that she was going to use before, but we bought her that extra time. And maybe she uses, whatever money she set aside, she pays that off so that it's still no interest on that one, but she has to start accumulating interest on the new one. We don't really know. I'm not saying that this is, certainly if you're listening to this, don't be like, oh, she said that this is the way to do it. It's not. We're just trying to figure things out. We're trying to be creative, just like anybody else out there. But I just want to let you know that there can be a lot of stress that comes with, oh my gosh, this is coming due. And how am I going to make sure that I pay that off if you have not had that as part of your plan? It's very easy, I think, to make a plan and then not stick to that plan. And then wonder what happened in between that 12 to 18 months or whatever time frame we're talking about in any given circumstance. And so that's definitely one of the slippery slopes I think can happen. But another one is just once you've convinced yourself that it's okay and maybe even good to use credit for whatever reason, it can get out of hand pretty quickly, especially because we know that usually we will spend more when we have something to swipe.
That's all the time we have today. Join us next time for part 2 of our conversation with Maria. That does it for this episode of the New Money Habits podcast. Remember, if you have any questions, make sure to hit us up on social at New Money Habits and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review to help us spread this message of hope to people looking for a better plan for their money.